Hello, I'm Zackery Hertz, and this fine feathered fellow on my shoulder is Oreo the Red Lord Amazon. And my co-host today is Jenna.
Hey guys, I'm Jenna Mason with Jenna Mason Media. I have the privilege of working with Zach a couple times now, and I do videography and photography.
Yeah, so go check out her company. She's done a lot of good work for me and building quite a team. The purpose of this video is to introduce you to my life and give you some background history of who I am and my life experience. I'm totally blind due to cancer called bilateral retinoblastoma, which was diagnosed at a month old. And Oreo is missing his right foot, and together we're disability buddies. And so this channel will be talking about disabilities, advocating for people with disabilities, and other general topics related to disabilities and just life experiences.
So Zach, did you want to tell us a little bit about the history of your life?
Yeah, sure. So we all have life stories, and I find it so interesting to share mine and to hear other people's stories. Mine starts in 1990. I was born in May. And a month later, my dad took me to the doctor, and the doctor diagnosed me with bilateral retinoblastoma, which literally means cancer of the eyes, and bilateral being in both eyes. They need to search for that because my dad himself had the same cancer when he was a baby. And so it was just a checkup to see if I had it, and sure enough, I did. And it's a high chance that I had it while in the uterus, so in utero. And they ended up doing experimental treatments like cryo and lasers, and then they did intensive radiation. And by age 1, my right eye had to be removed, and by age 2, my left eye had to be removed. And then because of the radiation, in 1996, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor called osteosarcoma. At the time, though, they didn't know it was osteosarcoma, and they thought it was cancerous. And they gave me 3 months to live. So they started treating the osteosarcoma with chemo, and they did that for 6 months. And then they did a 12-hour operation a week before Halloween. And then so the surgery was supposed to be 16 hours, but they got it done in 12 hours. I have some pretty awesome, amazing, skilled doctors that were working on me at the time. And they said that I wouldn't be out trick-or-treating, which, you know, as a 6-year-old made me really sad. And I said, I think you're wrong. You know, the precociousness of a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
And I was right. I was out trick-or-treating that Halloween. I went as Frankenstein and had one of the best costumes because I had a huge scar that went from ear to ear with 182 staples and 300 stitches. So
Wow.
the spirit of a kid.
Is that kind of like how your attitude was about everything you were going to? Or?
Like looking back as an adult, so like it's always interesting to look back with an adult perspective at the kid perspective or the childhood perspective, because for me, that was just a normal day. Like going through chemo and doing all the stuff I went through, people now will say, oh, you're such a hero or you're such a warrior. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. There was none of that thought pattern when I was going through this. It was, oh, this is just another normal day. I have to deal with this. Like there's no pity me or woe is me attitude. It's, oh, hey, this is something we all have to go through. I didn't realize that because when you're in a children's hospital, there's nothing but kids who are going through similar stuff. You know, they're fighting leukemia, they're fighting tumors, they're dealing with rare genetic disorders. So that's kind of what you get to know. And there's no like, oh, I'm such a special person or I'm a miracle child. Like it becomes very normalized very quickly. As a 6-year-old, I was being raised as an adult. I was being talked to like an adult. Doctors would come in and start throwing these big words around, and I had to either understand it or get over it because they weren't going to dumb it down for me. They were there to save my life and to help keep me healthy. And they didn't have time to think about respecting a kid enough to dumb it down so the kid can understand it. So it forced you to grow up really quickly. On Christmas, I got a call saying that the cancer was gone, the tumor had been removed, and that I was successfully cured at that point. And that was a very fun Christmas morning. The doctor literally called me at 6 a.m. and said, hey, wow, this is Dr. Pendergrass. And I was like, hey. And I was like, do you want to talk to my dad? He's like, nope, I just want to talk to you. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, so what's up? And he's like, well, I just got your scans results back and I got all your other test results back, and I'm calling to let you know that you're tumor free. and you don't have to continue chemo, and you can get you can basically consider yourself cured. And I was like, are you sure you don't want to talk to my dad?
Wow.
Because as a kid, I'm like, oh, that sounds like something my dad should know. I'm not going to
Yeah.
relay that information to him real well. And it's like, okay. So I finally got him on the phone with my dad, and I just ran to my grandma's room. I jumped on her bed at 6 a.m. I was like, guess what? Guess what? Guess what? I'm cured. My grandma's like, okay. She thought maybe just, she didn't realize that the doctor had called. She thought I was just being kind of like a kid being like super hopeful and all that. And then my dad came in and told her, and she was like, oh, okay. And so that kind of made a Christmas really special for 96. For the next few years, I would have to deal with some smaller tumors that were closer on the outside of the skull. So really nothing major, just a couple of surgeries. And by a couple, I mean like 20, 30, to
Wow.
go in and to remove the tumors. And then and at age 13, I was diagnosed with another tumor. This one being a tumor that wrapped around a nerve in my face called the trigeminal nerve. And so this would be the third trigeminal nerve. And the tumor was restricting and compressing that nerve really bad, and it was causing chronic pain. And to this day, still causes chronic pain. The nerve is permanently damaged. And so it started me on a lifelong journey with chronic pain. It changed my life forever.
Is there any explanation at this time of like why you were getting so many tumors? Is that
So a lot of that has to do with the radiation. So people don't understand that radiation and chemo cause long-term effects. Chemo is a poison. Radiation is a poison. They're literally poisoning you to get the worst, to get the more evil thing out of your body, but they're still using quote unquote an evil substance to do it, if you want to look at it from that perspective.
right?
But it's like, what do we do to save your life? Because you're gonna die at this point. So we're gonna use this less harmful thing to get rid of the thing that's killing you. And we're gonna hope that the less harmful thing doesn't do damage. And back in the 90s, radiation, or back in the 90s, radiation was kind of like their miracle cure. And they used it heavily. If I remember right, my radiation appointments was like 3 times a week for like 4 months. So that's a lot of radiation.
Yeah, that is.
And I don't remember it because like I was an infant, but it definitely took a toll. And so it caused bone defects in my face. It caused my teeth to be messed up, my baby teeth and my adult teeth. And nowadays they can kind of target areas with chemo or radiation, but back then it was kind of full spread. If you want to get this one spot in the head, you have to use wide. You had to hit the whole head. You couldn't just pinpoint it.
Wow.
And same with chemo. So they were pumping the chemo throughout my entire body. I had a tube that went in my chest into my main artery that comes off the heart. Forgive me, I don't remember the medical terminology, but it goes into this big artery, and that's how they give you chemo. And so it's being pumped all around your body. And they're trying to get it to the tumor in your head, but it's going to your feet, your hands, your major organs. So it caused all this long-term damage. And some of the effects are still unknown. But anyway, so the radiation caused all the tumors, and it's very likely that I will get more tumors. I'm always on the lookout for things like that, and it seems like every 7 to 10 years I end up getting some sort of tumor or problem. Chemo itself caused neuropathy in my hands, so I'm very sensitive to heat and cold. I get pains in my hands. My hands go numb really easily. So the tumor at age 14 caused the chronic pain, and for the next 14 years I was on opiates, and I was basically a functional addict because I was dependent on the opiates to stop the pain, and unfortunately they didn't really stop the pain, they just made it tolerable. I went to school like this. I graduated I graduated high school with a 3.7. I don't remember high school. Like high school was not something that I remember. I remember going to high school, but I was so drugged up that I literally slept through all my classes and just stayed up at night and did all my work. It changed my life. Opiates are a crazy thing to be on for that long. And I, for the first 2 years of college, first 2 or 3 years of college, I was on opiates. And then I just remember one day being on my last pill and was like, I'm done. I can't keep this up. I was hearing voices. I was getting paranoid. I was living in the apartments on campus, and I remember that my upstairs neighbors, or I remember thinking that my upstairs neighbors were pumping gas into my apartment through little pipes that they'd drilled through the floor. And I've done some hallucinogenic substances,
Yeah.
mushrooms and LSD specifically, and I'm able to tell what is a rational thought and what is like a irrational thought and what's like being created by a substance. And those thoughts were very, very like chemically induced. I knew that those were not rational, logical thoughts. So I was ready to quit. And that's one of the things with addiction or a dependence on chemicals like that with opiates. You have to be ready to quit because otherwise it's not going to work. And so I just quit cold turkey for 6 days, and it was 6 days of hell. So yeah, that's kind of, I graduated college with a bachelor's in business, and I started a company called Intrinsic Usability. And that company, and Intrinsic Usability, it has an app in prototype stage, which is a navigation app for visually impaired called Reference Point Navigation. It helps blind travelers get from point A to point B with step-by-step directions, both indoors and outdoors. It provides access to signs and real-time information that a sighted person would have on a daily basis. It also allows for a user to get help if they get stuck in an area or there's an emergency and they need emergency evacuation. It will give them that ability. You can find out more about that at intrinsicusability.com or referencepointnavigation.com. Links will be in the description.
So, after going through all of that in your life, like it just sounds like you've gone through a lot of struggle, like with just the pain, with the tumors, dealing with cancer, the like chemo, and then the opiates, and somehow still going to school and getting a 3.7 GPA. That's amazing. How do you feel like it's shaped you? It's, of course, things like that are going to just shape a person because they're just such intense experiences. So how do you feel like that's all shaped you to who you are now?
So for me, I find positivity is probably the best way to navigate through all this. You got to keep in mind, I grew up with a father who went through a lot of the same things I did, and he took the depressed route. I know he didn't choose to be depressed or to have depression, but I watched it destroy him. My dad didn't cope well with being blind, and I can understand why. My dad, he had some vision from a young age, and then he got more vision. He got his vision back enough to drive for 20 years, and then that was taken from him due to diabetes. So he went totally blind. And so it really messed with him. And having that role model made me kind of realize, like, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to always tell someone no because of my disability, or I don't want my disability to become a bigger disability. So I deal with depression, I deal with anxiety, I deal with stress, but I don't let it stop me. And I let it have its place. And then I also let happiness and positivity and the power of doing stuff have its place. Like, I'm very strong-willed, I'm motivated. I might be procrastinative and deal with ADHD, but I love getting stuff done. I love accomplishing things, and that keeps me driving forward. Like, every day I wake up and I realize, like, I haven't done enough to make the world different or better for me or others. So that really pushes my motivation to succeed. Like, there's so much I want to do, and I feel like my time is growing short. I've dodged the bullet quite a few times as far as not, passing on, but I feel like I can only dodge that bullet so many times before it takes me out. And there's a lot that I want to accomplish to help others in the same positions I've been in, and to tell stories and to give people the chance to have a voice. So that's the whole point of this video and this YouTube channel and my TikTok. So that's kind of what I want to do and where I want to be.
Well, that's amazing. I think that's really admirable, and it shows a lot of strength that you have that a lot of us might not have, who go through less intense experiences. And that's what's also interesting is, like, sometimes you hear of people who go through really horrible traumatic things, and a lot of them might seem justified to be mad at the world and mad at people and, like, just mad in general, and kind of have that depression and that negative outlook on things, like why did this happen to me, or why is this happening, like it's not fair, you know. Have you gone through those kinds of thoughts? And if you have, like, obviously you know how to push through that.
I definitely have gone through those thoughts, like why me, like what did I do to get this, what did I do to get this lot in life? And I've discovered for me those thoughts aren't helpful. They don't get me anywhere. They're always going to come up, and I think about it, and then if I can't come up with a good answer or a rational logical answer, then I'm like, okay, then I just move on, because sitting there and having that constant, that why me attitude on a loop is really going to cause more harm than good.
Yeah.
I know people get stuck in these cycles of depression, and I've just learned, for me personally, how to break out of those. What I do may not work for everybody else, but I do my best to keep myself from going down that spiral. And having Oreo
Hmm.
has really helped with that. Oreo makes me happy on a daily basis. He makes me smile. So having Oreo around has greatly increased that ability to pull myself out of those loops and those cycles, and
Hmm.
to think positively, because I'm not just living for myself now. I'm living for Oreo. Um,
Hmm.
so that's super beneficial. Get a parrot is what I'm saying. Always rescue, never buy. Always rescue.
Yeah, yeah.
I hope you like, subscribe, and share this content. Follow Jenna and I on our different platforms. You can follow me on TikTok at Zackery Hertz, just like the YouTube channel. You can check out my website, disabilitybuddies.com, which it talks about Oreo and I. And you can check out my company's website, intrinsicusability.com. And you can find Jenna.
Yeah, if you want to stay up to date with what I'm doing, you can check out my website. It's jennamasonmedia.com. And my Instagram handle is also at Jenna Mason Media.
Thank you for watching. Take care, y'all.